afternoon, good evening, good day, depending on where you're watching us from this afternoon. It's a great privilege and honor to come to you this evening on the day 11 of our intermittent fasting, staying in momentum challenge. We have heard 11 amazing days where we are monitoring the window within which we eat, and then the rest of the time we are fasting so that we can allow so many different things to happen to our body. For the last 10 days, today being the 11th day, I've had the opportunity and the privilege and the honor to bring various topics and to talk about different things to do with intermittent fasting. At the beginning, when I was beginning this challenge, I thought there is so much that has been covered on intermittent fasting. There isn't much that I can do on that. And that is why I was thinking it can be like reinventing the wheel to try and talk about intermittent fasting. However, every single day, I've actually discovered new things that I've loved to talk about, and it has been incredible to see the much support that I've got from you guys, those who continue to like, those who continue to subscribe, those who continue to follow us, those who continue to share this content. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And of course, if you're still out there, and you're thinking like this is quite interesting, it sounds very an interesting way of talking about nutrition, and if you like this content, why not click that subscribe button, as this really helps us a lot. It helps again when you're viewing these videos. Maybe I just want to make a little bit of a humble plea. Don't just click on it and then move on, because YouTube doesn't really count that as a view, and then it disputes those views, and eventually it just ends up with this fluctuating of views. But if you find the content interesting, at least watch it for a little while. That will go a long way supporting what you're doing. So today being day 11, I'm not really going to do much of talking, but I just want to talk a little bit about the link between the gut or the digestive system and intermittent fasting. And if you're new here, of course, I'll begin by just giving a little bit of a story, because we have been on this journey of 30 days of this challenge. And so far, like yesterday, I did my first weighing in 10 days, and it was so encouraging to see how much progress I've made. And of course, if you want to look at out of that video, you can check it out on this channel's page, where we've talked about how much we've been able to lose so far, and we're looking forward to seeing the next couple of days how much we'll be able to gain, or to in terms of losing of weight. And of course, I've always mentioned this, and I will never emphasize it enough. It's not recommended to lose more than 500 grams in a week. And so if I've lost about 900 grams in 10 days, it's kind of a way, a 1.5 weeks, and which I think for sure. And this is also a challenge. So it's something that we are encouraging ourselves to go way above the normal, way beyond the normal, so that we can at least achieve something that will demand us and will demand our energy. And so today, as I talk about the digestive system, I'd like you to take a little bit of a journey with me. On this journey, I'd like you to think about your digestive system, let's say like a pipe. And so if you're kind of in a way constantly pumping food in that pipe, let's try with this balloon. I'm going to try to blow it. It may burst at some point, but let's try to do it. Keep on eating. Wake up in the morning, you've had your breakfast. This is our pipe, trying to imagine this is our digestive system. We have, like, of course, you have the mouth, and then you have the last part of the digestive system, where you get rid of the food, where you get food of the waste, you get rid of it at the end. And then, of course, here you have got your gut, or the long tract, where you get to the end, where you have your gut, where you have all this gut microbiota in there. So imagine every single day that you are eating, your digestive system goes to work. So you're trying to pump food into that pipe, you're trying to pump food into that tract, you're trying to pump the food, and constantly you wake up in the morning, you're having your breakfast. You wake up and then you have your brunch, and then you have your lunch, then you have your tea, then you have your dinner. More pressure, more pressure. Constantly, this is happening every single day, every single moment. And some of us, we're even snacking on our way to bed. So the last thing that we do when we're going to bed is eating. When we wake up in the morning, more pressure. And this continues for a long period of time. If you live for 80 years, or if you live for 90 years, or if you live no matter how much duration of time you're having, some of us, we never allow these digestive system that we have, and it doesn't grow bigger because you've eaten more food. It doesn't grow larger because you've eaten a big meal. Imagine the organ that you have is what you have, and no matter whether you're eating a lot, whether you're eating less, whether you're eating more, whether you're eating continuously, your digestive tract doesn't stretch to be able to accommodate like this balloon that stretches itself up to accommodate the pressure. And so when you're constantly pumping your system, constantly eating, it gets to a point that sometimes the food might start to become sluggish in there. Sometimes it can even stay there because you're constantly not processing it enough. And that is where intermittent fasting or fasting in general can actually be helpful. You get to a point where you start to fast, you're kind of allowing that pressure, kind of in a way starting to release it off that digestive system. You're starting kind of in a way to allow what you have already that's stored in there to start kind of to be used, to kind of start to be kind of utilized before you put in new food in there. And so in a way, it's like resting your digestive system when you're fasting. Try to think about it. We take days off from work. We take a Sunday, for example, for those of us who believe in Sabbath, just to rest our bodies. And that's also what happens to our bodies when we fast. That's what happens to our digestive system when we fast. We're kind of resting it in a way so that the pressure is elevated, or the pressure is kind of in a way reduced. And once that pressure is reduced, wherever that was stored or wherever that could have actually ended up maybe to start to leak out and things like that start to be processed, and what you don't need from the body gets eliminated as waste products. And of course, whatever that you need at the end of it all in that gut, you find that the bacteria that lives in the gut, which is the gut microbiome, starts to break down that food. It starts to break down those reserves, and it starts to harvest that energy. You start to have those the food is broken down into what is called short chain fatty acids. Those short chain fatty acids can be things like acetate, butyrate, which are really good, and they can become a source of harvesting of energy. And this can help with things like weight loss. This can help with things like reduction of things like obesity. Whereas if you're constantly feeding and feeding, you're not allowing the gut microbiome, or those more than 100 trillion microorganisms that are living in your gut, they're not given enough time to be able to work. So one of the things that fasting does, I said, number one, it does rest the digestive system. The same way our bodies need rest, the same way we need rest from work, it does help it to stop kind of constantly working out. And of course, once that happens, it allows those microorganisms that are in our guts to kind of in a way begin to process the food, begin to break down the food, and that can actually as well enhance the diversity of the gut microbiome. Of course, once you're eating again, try to think of what am I reintroducing in my body. So if you're giving yourself different types of food, you find that different microbes will be able to break those foods down, and that can enhance the whole diversity of the gut microbiome and the gut microflora, and that can actually result in a more enhanced, beautiful kind of microflora that will ward off diseases, ward off things like all these microbes, kill off all the bad guys that you don't need in your body. And there is a very strong connection between our gut and things like our mood, our gut and things like obesity, which is an example. A couple of kind of around last year, one of my students did a project trying to look at the gut microbiome and how it is modulated, or how it is affected when you have a child when they're born. If you decide to breastfeed your child versus, let's say, formula feeding, that really in a sense that set up the gut microbiome, and that can result in so much impact and so much effect at the end of the day on the diversity of the gut. And the diversity of the gut has so much impact on things like weight loss, on things like harvesting of energy, and that's another advantage of when you fast. It can be helpful. The other thing, of course, things to do with things like inflammation. As I was mentioning, look at this balloon again. You're constantly pumping it. And there is no more position or no more place for it to increase. This is not something, I'm just trying to make it simple to try and imagine. There can be possibilities that you can start to have some leakages. If I introduce that bastard, that was the whole idea at the end. But if you're starting to kind of see all these kind of so much into the system that eventually there is nowhere that is going to be released, they can start to have things like leaky gut. There can be like some leakages and things like that. And probably that could be a good connection between some of these ailments, digestive disorders that we have, because we're not resting. We're not allowing what we have already in our tummy to undergo complete digestion before we can feed our body with a brand new or fresh food. Of course, we know also when you are eating your food, the other advantage or the other link between intermittent fasting or fasting in general and digestive health is try to think about, again, insulin resistance. We talked about insulin sensitivity, how fasting can help with regulating the insulin and makes it to become a little bit more sensitive. Insulin sensitivity is linked to things like diabetes, and there's a close, very close relationship between diabetes and things like irritable bowel syndrome. And IBS is one of those things, again, leaky gut, if you so to say, that can actually be related or correlated with things like, again, digestive issues. And that can be quite a good way. But of course, if you have any of these conditions, I'm not asking you to start tomorrow fasting just because you want to alleviate it, but it might be something worth discussing with a dietitian or discussing with a medical professional who understands your journey, who can be able to advise you accordingly on the things that you can do to enhance yourself or to enhance your health. And of course, the other thing that you can think about, if you're looking at this pipe, or if you're looking at your digestive system, so you're having that wherever that you have, and constantly you're pumping it with nutrients, and not allowing them to kind of get away of being processed. There's no nutrients to not be absorbed optimally. So when we fast, we can actually enhance the absorption of these nutrients. And once we enhance the absorption of these nutrients, we can end up getting more from the food that we eat, rather than if we are constantly pumping ourselves in and out with food. Also, just the less pressure that you are having on your own digestive system when you fast, because again, some of the foods that we have, it can actually take, let's say, if you have a geriatric, somebody who's unwell, or somebody who's elderly and not feeling so well, it might take longer time for the food to process through the whole gut until you get the end of whatever that you don't need, and things like that. People that have slow metabolic rates and things like that, it can actually kind of get to a point that even just normally, if you're 100% normal, and of course I've said if you're fasting, you should be somebody who's 100% in good health, it gets to a point that you're constantly having that pressure, but just in a way reducing that pressure, reducing that kind of impact every so often, having to kind of overload your digestive system, can be so helpful and can be very, very, very good in terms of weight management, of course. And that weight management can also result in a better gut health, and a better gut health can result, again, I've said, in things like a better mood. It can result in things like there's a relationship again between gut microbiome or microbiota and things like, again, immune function, etc., which I'm not going to cover today, but just to show you there is so much that you can actually have at the end of the day if you're trying to incorporate fasting as something that you can do regularly. It will be helpful not only for your health in terms of weight loss and things like that, but it can be good for your digestive system. So next time you're pumping food into your body, just try to think of like, okay, I can try to rest my digestive system, and that can make it become much more optimal, become much more better. And of course, the final thing that I would love to close with tonight, try to think of autophagy, which is something that I've mentioned again in one of the videos that I made on what happens to our bodies when we fast. Autophagy can actually help to eliminate any of those things that you don't need in the body and things like that. And when you fast, actually, you can end up with any of these dead cells and wherever that you don't necessarily need in the body being eliminated, and that can result in an enhanced health. And of course, that's what everyone desires to have at the end of the day. So hopefully that was helpful to help you know that fasting has numerous possibilities and numerous health outcomes and health impacts, and it's something that you might just want. Again, as I said, don't try to do 20 hours of a fasting if you've never done an hour without food. Start slow, build it into your regime, and you'll see how much impact that can have on your body. As usual, as I said, it has been a great pleasure bringing you day 11 of our intermittent fasting episode. I hope to see you again tomorrow when I talk about something different. Until then, my prayer for you is that you will prosper and be in good health, even as your souls prosper. And again, as I said, if you find this useful, please don't forget to like it, to subscribe, or to share it with somebody. This might be information that when you pass it on to somebody, it could be helpful for them. Until tomorrow, I pray that you have a prosperous evening, and I shall see you later tomorrow when I joined with my dear friend Abby. We are coming back with another episode to talk a little bit about something different, and I'm sure you've enjoyed having Abby around, and it will be a great pleasure to have Abby tomorrow, and I can't wait to hear what she has to bring us. But until then, have a great day and great evening, depending on where you're watching us from. And I shall see you again soon. Bye bye.